Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Well, what would Layla think of things? So, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guitarist Eric Clapton is roasted on Twitter. I mean, there are a couple of blue checkmark Twitter users for releasing a song with Van Morrison that slams COVID-19 lockdowns after the singer calls the government fascist bullies. So, of course, any rock or punk, particularly punk, they're very much anti-authoritarian. They're very much libertarian individualists, as in hoping that the government will leave them alone in order to get on with their lives. And rock is very similar. So it is to be expected that anybody within that crowd would really very much like the government to leave them alone. And seeing as both these gentlemen are 75 years of age, then you would expect that of them, seeing as they are used to the right wing, the conservatives, being more censorial with regards to religious grounds. As in, well, you can't say that kind of thing because that's not very Christian, and that is not what Jesus would want, and being very Puritan. However, of course, we've seen the left wing go after them instead, and it's bloody ridiculous that when you have punk rockers being against authoritarians that they used to be against the right wing, and now they're against the left wing. They haven't changed, except it seems that their enemy has. So now, because of COVID-19 restrictions, or, if you will, authoritarian overreach, which has been brought about through the global pandemic of the coronavirus, then they're against the right-wing parties, because in the UK at least, the so-called conservatives are in power. So, as they go on, music legends Eric Clapton and Van Morrison have been slammed on Twitter for joining forces to record a new song that is critical of COVID-19 lockdowns. Hardly a surprise, especially knowing Van Morrison. And, of course, the most respect goes to Van Morrison for persevering throughout this. He's made headlines before, of course, for being so-called controversial, but good on Eric Clapton for joining him, especially saying that we need to stand up and be counted when it comes to authoritarian overreach. So Morrison, 75, revealed on Friday that he had collaborated with a legendary guitarist, also 75, on the new track titled Stand and Deliver. Which is, of course, back to the highwayman, Dick Turpin and the like. News of the song, which isn't due to be released for another week. Yes, so all thoughts on it are not accurate yet, as it hasn't yet been released, resulted in a barrage of criticism on Twitter against the pair. And it's always difficult to gather exactly what is a barrage. As Tim Pool likes to say, mentions it about phones in particular, that if you've got 1,000 phones and 10 people complain, then who really cares? It's just 10 people. But if you've got 1,000,000 phones and 10,000 people then of course you're going to have more of an issue because, now it's 10,000 people. It's the same proportion, but seeing you've got 10,000 people making the news, then suddenly it seems like a huge issue for too many people complaining. And it's the same thing here. So Morrison has been highly critical of the lockdown imposed across the world in a bid to stop the spread of coronavirus. That's a bit too charitable for me, Daily Mail. He has previously released 3 songs as part of his anti-lockdown crusade that, in particular, protests the measures enforced by the UK government. And that is the main key point. To address to Boris Johnson, as he is supposed to be the Prime Minister at the moment, but I suppose it really depends who you think is pulling the strings, that people are going to die no matter what. And sure, you may wish to avoid these deaths, and good on you, but you can't. People are going to die. That is just a fact of life. Nothing is sure in life except for deaths and taxes. And seeing as you're ensure to keep the taxes going, deaths are also going to stay as well. So, music legends Eric Clapton and Van Morrison have been slammed on Twitter for joining forces to record a new song that is critical of COVID-19 lockdowns. Morrison, 75, revealed on Friday that he had collaborated with a legendary guitarist, also 75, for the new track titled Stand and Deliver that is due to be released on December 4th. So again, all this is just, people heard the stuff is happening, let's complain, even though we do not know what the lyrics are. And who knows, the left wing might agree, because of course they do not care about the principle, they only care about the targets. And if they're going after conservatives, then hey, maybe they'll actually bloody well agree. And of course the proper conservatives will agree, because they're all for small government and not getting involved in this. So it seems to be a winning formula for them. Well done. Clapton, who was the only person to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 3 times, recorded the song, but it was written by Morrison. And that is vitally important, as the academic agent likes to mention, that you do not wish to try to re-infiltrate back into the cathedral, which has been taken over by the left, but instead create something new. And I know Morgoth's Review likes to mention the same kind of thing. So Morrison has been highly critical of the lockdown. Yes, of course, as we all have, anybody who wishes to just appreciate individualism. So they go to try to mention through blue check marks, but we will start with Van Morrison himself, as he tweets, "The UK is my home. My business, directly and indirectly, provides employment for thousands of people each year. Imperial College, UK government and Northern Ireland executive have plunged us into lockdown, destroying those livelihoods. It's time they provide the roadmap back out." And ordinarily, personally, I would say it is not down to the government to decide which businesses can and can't work. It is not down to the government to decide who gets subsidies and who does not. But I do understand and respect the idea that if the government is saying that your style of business, which in this case is music, particularly live music, cannot continue, then it is down to them to try and find a way out of it, seeing as they are the ones that are stopping you from doing it in the first place. However, Eric Clapton and Van Morrison have decided to not wait for the government to make action, and instead have decided that money that they raise from this track will go to supporting smaller musicians, the ones that are struggling to get by in these trying times, as they like to say, and it will support them to ensure that they can still survive and help out the ones that are meaningful to them. Another fine example of how personal charity is making a worthwhile difference. So we've got blue check marks, like Kimberly Johnson saying, "And now they're dead to me." And I do sympathise for people who think that the coronavirus is such a big deal. Those poor people who think that, hey, I'm serving you, therefore I'm putting my life at risk and you got to have a lot of respect for me. I do sympathise, but no, you're not. Other blue check marks, and that's what we're going to read. From Keith Boykin, saying, on the one hand, Eric Clapton and Van Morrison are former rock stars. On the other hand, they're now 75-year-old white guys. Because, yes, now, of course, who cares about what the fuck you've done before? Now all that matters is your race and ethnicity. I'm surprised he didn't add in that they are straight. And of course, from Variety, music legends Eric Clapton and Van Morrison team for anti-lockdown songs Stand and Deliver. Got on them, trying to be as accurate and simplistic as possible. So, that is as it stands for Van Morrison and Eric Clapton. And good on them, and good on Eric Clapton, as I say, for saying that we gotta stand up and be counted. And I hope that other people who read this or learn of this, or maybe aren't aware of this whatsoever, also feel the same way, that the only way to get around these lockdowns is through civil disobedience. That is it. And just unacceptance, disacceptance, just not accepting, however you want to say it, the lockdown orders which are portrayed. So good on them, and let's hope this continues into the mainstream as much as possible, and people can say, well, hey, individual liberties are more important. Yes, people are going to die, but they will always die, so let's get on with life. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And until next time, have a good one.